What is going on, RotoGrinders? Welcome back to the NFL Pick Six Show, lucky number 13. Hopefully, y'all don't have the triskaidekaphobia. Usual suspects, as always, two of the best, two of the sharpest minds in all of fantasy football, breaking down the main slate here. DraftKings FanDuel, we talk at home. Of course, we're going to feature 3 games as well. Rich Hribar from Sharp Football Analysis, John Daigle from NBC Sports, fresh off a nice Thanksgiving. What do you want to call it, John? John, you're good to go this week, I imagine. Do you want to speak on last week? There's a lot of comments as far as our show was very popular last week, and feel free to give any thoughts out there.
Apologies to the one person that probably checked in to see what this Pick Six show was all about, and then he sees red-cheeked individual stumbling over David Johnson's name. Nonetheless, quick updates. One, I am okay. And by the way, we were clairvoyant, like playing Tony Pollard with Zeke, the Deshaun Jackson man coverage call. It all went well until, unlike champagne, like last year when I sacrificed my body for all the listeners, whiskey sneaks up a little more on you. Could not control the ending of that one. But we were still clairvoyant in the Thanksgiving slate, the Sunday slate a little shaky. Also, the second update is that, yeah, we're still here. We're doing good, but I actually forgot what it was. I forgot what the second update was. So go ahead. Never mind.
We'll put it on layaway. If it pops up, feel free to chime in.
I'm sure I'll have another idea.
Rich, we were talking pre-show. You took some of the thoughts we had as far as Thanksgiving. You applied that to your lineups, and you won yourself some American dollars. Tell me what happened.
Yeah, American dollars were had. I was winning a lot of American dollars until that second Dawson Knox touchdown. But we enjoyed a really fruitful Thanksgiving. We had 0 Dave Montgomery, and we rode off into the wee hours of the night watching Tony Jones run for 1 yard of carry and no one getting any points from it. But yeah, the second Dawson Knox touchdown was the killer, man. I hung on for as long as I could. But yeah, then we bounced back to Sunday, and I was getting killed the entire day. I'm like, this is stupid. Football's dumb. And I had a Ram stack come through. Odell finally decided to score a touchdown, and we stacked up that game and had a nice hit too. So we had a nice weekend. December's off to a good start. Tomorrow is my 15th wedding anniversary, so shout out to my wife Jennifer. We'll do a little dinner and stuff. So we had a good start to the Christmas month.
Congratulations.
I remember what my second update was now, and it is in honor of Rich's wedding anniversary. It is the David Johnson update everyone wanted. Just to let everyone know, he had 10 touches through the first 18 minutes of the game and then got injured. I just want to give that note. He was on his way there. I don't know what he was on his way to, but he was on his way to something.
Better than Tony Jones. I ran 150 in the Yahoo, the big contest over there, and I did have a pinch. I had a pinch of David Johnson, so he was actually in my pool begrudgingly.
So did the Texans.
Oh man, and I had the other guy too. What's Rex?
Rex Burkhead.
Yeah, Rex Burkhead. I think a pinch of both, like 2 or 3% of both, like a just in case, firing off some lineups. Yeah, you figure one of them would get there, but yeah.
How much Austin Walter did you have?
I think he got the X button.
I think that's 4 games in a row now that the Texans haven't gone over 100 yards in the second half. Over the last month, they're now the last team in Football Outsiders DVOA. Their offense is, as you would guess, atrocious.
Yeah, and they've announced that Tyrod is going to start basically the rest of the season, which makes no sense. But hey, I look back on the things a lot. It's been a year of a bunch of crazy events in the NFL, but I look back at that Davis Mills just absolutely torching the Patriots defense. It's like one of the true anomalies of the season.
That sideline throw into zone 2, into cover 2, where Chris Conley jumped up between 2 defenders and they ran into each other, and he had a 70-yard touchdown. Still don't understand how a Patriots defense breaks down like that.
Who should be the quarterback for Houston? Should be Davis Mills? Is he still healthy? Is he a healthy number 2 behind Tyrod?
Why not? Yeah, why not?
I mean, I guess. Yeah, I mean, Tyrod, when they're theoretically good, obviously Taylor's not going to be the quarterback.
First draft pick.
What round was he? Was he an actual? I thought he was like an undrafted free agent for some reason. He was actually drafted
in the second round.
Really? I didn't know this. Why would they play a second rounder? Good question. That's the question you're asking, and it makes sense.
They're handing the ball off to Rex Burkhead. What do you want me? I have no answers. Dean, there's some wise men in the world, some great storytellers.
That is no organization. It's so amazing how some organizations can be like super, super sharp, and other ones just have like no clue what they're doing. Unfortunately for Houston, we're sorry they are the former. Yeah, that's rough for sure. We're going to talk the main slate, obviously, in a second. Focus on three games. First one on the slate is the Chargers. Chargers at Cincinnati, 50.5 as far as the total. Cincinnati is a 3-point favorite. I ran my optimals on a Wednesday, and this is always important to note. I always kind of mention that we're recording this on Wednesday. There's a lot of injuries that are out there. Some we know, some we don't know. Just understand the situations are fluid. I didn't see Daigle. I didn't see Joe Mixon popping up in our optimals, like basically at all. Very, very little. And he's been money in the bank. He's awesome this season. Matchup against the Chargers, really solid. Chargers watching a run. They subdue the pass as much as they can. They welcome you and welcome Matt to run the ball. And Mixon has obliged. He's been awesome this season. And I saw, was it Jim Sons? He was tweeting out about he's the player that has appeared in the most optimal lineups on FanDuel this season. I believe 6 times Joe Mixon has appeared in the optimal lineup.
Insane. His price on FanDuel, I do like a weekly pricing article, and he's popped up. He like literally all 8 weeks of the season, he's popped up as been like, why the hell is he priced like this? And they finally got religion. Are
people going to start playing him this week, or is it?
No, he's 9-4 over there now.
Yeah, well, the price is certainly adjusted. Yeah,
he had never been 8K. He had never been over 8K. Last week was 8K. That was the highest he got. So and then they'd take him to 8K to 9-4. But they were dragging their feet the entire season. Like last week was the first time he was even 8K the entire year on FanDuel, mind you. Like Joe Mixon is a FanDuel running back, and it was the first time he's even 8K. And the dude's had a touchdown in 8 straight games.
Awesome. And he's 8-1 on DK, but the DK price a little bit better as well. Like you said, he's more of a FanDuel guy, touchdown guy, a little less as far as catching the ball, but he's capable. Well, what are your thoughts? I guess we'll start there as far as Mixon in this matchup against the Chargers on the ground.
I mean, sorry. I didn't know. I'm sorry. You go for it.
Bad job by me.
I have no idea. I'll quickly go. Because one, it's an interesting slate if we step back real quick, because last week we didn't want to play anyone. That's why like even Leone took down the Thunderdome with Ben Roethlisberger. That was the thesis. If I could have explained it, I was not in the right situation to explain the David Johnson thesis, was to save salary and allocate it elsewhere, which is why I was willing to pay down, because it was such an ugly slate that's how we were doing, knowing that all quarterbacks we were going to play were probably ugly anyway. So it's okay, spend up elsewhere. But whereas this week, especially at running back, like every play again is just good. It's just going to be tough. We're going to see where ownership goes throughout the week. But this game in particular is really interesting because Chargers have blitzed at a top 10 rate this year and top 12 over the last month. Brandon Staley did scale back a hair whenever they needed to. Like they only blitzed Mahomes on 18% of his dropbacks in week 3 and Derek Carr on 17% in week 4. And Reeves was well ahead of this on Joe Burrow's stats against the blitz, 11 yards per attempts, and now 9 touchdowns this year against the blitz. But we've also seen the Bengals change their offense entirely and lean on Joe Mixon at the 6th highest run play rate from neutral game script and 5th highest with a lead over the last month. Now out of their bye, back-to-back games with at least 30 touches. And so if you play Joe Burrow, I think it's good. But you also clearly want to play him with the Chargers receivers, thinking that, okay, like the Chargers are who score points, and then they have no choice but to get away from using Mixon while trailing and then go to Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, who last week, of course, was the GPP bro play of the week. And that's the one time finally no one played him. And then if you played him in tournaments, he got there, of course, because his rates didn't change, just no one played him.
Yeah. Who's your favorite run back on the Chargers side?
It's still Keenan Allen for me. I'm hoping Reeves can explain something going on with Justin Herbert, because at this point, we're still just betting on talent, in my opinion, and we don't know which way it's going to go, like weekly. We thought we had it figured out with man and zone defense, but even then, we've seen Mike Williams fail now pretty much in every game since week 6. Like the one time we got excited about him, Mike Williams on Sunday night, he only had a 14.5% target share. He didn't reach 100 yards, but he at least had the big touchdown to get to 90 yards and a score. So it's not really even anything like lots of confidence we have in him outside of just being Mike Williams, a big play threat, hoping it's one of those games he hits.
Reeves, you said in the all 22. What do we have? Who's popping this week? Is it going to be Allen? Is it going to be Williams? Finally Williams? Is that going to happen?
I mean, it's basically a wing and a prayer. It turns out career target shares, kind of come true in the wash. He hasn't had 20% of the team targets in a game since the past 6 games, any of them. And really his only time he got there was like when the Steelers gift box a touchdown to them on that 53-yard play on Sunday night. So it's really tough to just like say like he's going to get it, because there's no peripheral usage that says like, yeah, this guy is going to break out. Like consistently with T. Higgins, it was right. Like there's people kept playing T. Higgins. He was still be like good. Like T. Higgins, like outside of the week prior, where he only had a couple targets against the Raiders, had consistently been good. He just haven't got everyone's chasing the ceiling week. And then it finally happened the week after. But there's nothing like that with Mike Williams right now. Like, so the targets aren't really there for him. They're all going to Keenan Allen. Chargers still one of this low A-dot offense. They're not really taking shots downfield. The right side of the line is still bad. Yeah, it's interesting. Circling back to the Mixon thing, one of the things Brandon Staley's done in terms of adjustments is on the defensive side. Is it interesting enough? So they entered their bye at the second lowest rate of stack boxes defensively. Teams are running all over them. And they're actually first in the NFL in stack box rate since the bye. They want teams to stop running on them, and they had been pretty good up until last week outside of the bye. They were allowing just under 4 yards per carry since the bye, and then they gave up some big runs. And game script got away from them last week against the Broncos, and the Broncos were able to stack a bunch of rushing yardage on them. Because it is an interesting spot. The layout is to let people chase Mixon and then try to play the passing pieces here as direct leverage. Also, too, the Bengals, their past 3 games, they have 9 touchdowns, 7 of them been rushing, 2 have been passing. Prior to that, it was 21 passing touchdowns to 6 rushing touchdowns. This is how these things happen in the course of the season. Ebb and flow. These things tend to correct themselves. They were skewing way towards one direction, and it's smack dab. You hit a hot streak of rushing touchdowns. Eventually, that's going to flip now, and we're going to get some passing touchdowns here too. Because the team scoring this many touchdowns and that good is going to have passing touchdowns. I mean, T. Higgins had tackled at the 1 yard line last week. You see how these things happen, and you get run into rushing scores. Justin Jefferson's done it like 100 times this year. It feels like getting tackled at the 1 yard line. So it does set up that way well. Chargers side, I think, is pretty clear. Like you talked about it, target's going to Keenan Allen. The ball's going to Austin Eckler. He's got 7 rushing touchdowns, 7 receiving touchdowns. Kind of just jack of all trades. He's got that role. And interesting enough, he's not running the ball at all. He's even had more than 12 carries in just one of his past 6 games. Like he's just kind of getting there by the scoring route. He's even gone over 100 total yards, I think, in only 2 of his past 5 games. But the touchdowns have just been there weekly. So yeah, he's a run back too. I think interesting enough, and it's gross, and no one's gonna want to hear it, but a lot of people are gonna say, look at the Chargers splits, and they're gonna say, yeah, tight ends against the Chargers, yeah, tight ends against the Chargers. But like we've done this with Uzoma before. He had a matchup 2 weeks ago against the Raiders, and he's just not involved. He's got those 2 spike week games. Even the one game he got there on 3 targets. He's just not getting the ball. I actually think that this does set up well, like your cheap guy here, if you're going to do like doubles and onslaught this game, actually is Tyler Boyd for that reason. Because like slot guys, interior targets against this defense, the way it's designed, I actually think it is like more of a Tyler Boyd setup to be one of those like sneaky guys to like come and have one of those spike weeks.
That one will fly under the radar too. Like with T. Higgins, we had reached 4 weeks in a row, and that's why no one played him. Like they just can't do it anymore despite the rates. Like Jamar Chase, we're not at that point yet. People are still going to want to play Jamar Chase, even after a 12.5% target share last week.
So as far as fantasy points given up, FanDuel specific as a team, as a collective, we talk about how the Chargers let you run. They're much tougher against the pass. They are the second best team in all of football as far as yielding collective fantasy points to wide receivers, 21.64. And like the Cincinnati receivers, they're always in play. Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Greaves. How much does that subdue you? How much does that make you not want to play them necessarily? And again, it's pointing to Mixon. The price is bumped up on them, and you never really know as far as touchdown variance. But it doesn't look like this great matchup. Doesn't mean you can't beat it. But I don't think, like, just as a general, Chase, Higgins, you talk about Boyd possibly being the best when you factor in salary. I'm not thrilled to play Chase and Higgins. Maybe that's a problem. Maybe that's a mistake, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, I brought up the splits, right? Since their week 7 bye, they've been trying to load the box more, right? Now let's look at your wide receiver stats and go away from the 10,000 view of 12 weeks of the NFL season. And now let's look at just how they've been against receivers since the bye. Definitely not as good, right? Obviously, last week, the game script gets in the way. Denver just doesn't throw. They turtle. But let's look at the week before that. What'd they do against the Steelers? Oh, Deontay Johnson, 7 for 101 and a touchdown. Chase Claypool, 5 for 93 and a touchdown. How about the week before that? Justin Jefferson, 9 for 143 and a touchdown. Adam Thielen, 5 for 65. How about the week before that? Devontae Smith, 5 for 116 and a touchdown. You see how it
can get noisy for sure.
Yeah,
there's a lot of noise, and it's hard to separate the noise, like what's real and what's not real. And by the way, I just did it for the last 4 weeks. I just kind of ran it real quickly. First of all, New England, 11.05 collective fantasy points to wide receivers. Like, it's insane. Like, good. I know it's only 4 weeks, but still, that's an insane number. The second best team, by the way, Cincinnati. Cincinnati's 17.93. Again, smaller samples, more variance, more goofiness, but kind of sort of something interesting. The Chargers more or less middle of the pack. to your point.
Yeah, because they've been trying to insulate some of and protect what happened in the front half of the season, where teams were just running for 200 yards a game on them, and so they were trying. They had collectively made changes. Like you look at how they defended the run since the bye, it's been a lot better. Now they're still giving up a bunch of rushing touchdowns, so it doesn't matter. But they've been better than what they were before. They just don't have quite the personnel to play that system in terms of like guys, with the run fits. But I do think that the way the Bengals are set up, they can have some success throwing here for sure, especially because where the Chargers give up production, they're still not giving up anything really like a lot of huge plays. They did have the one to Claypool a couple weeks ago, but where they give up a lot of production still, the way it's designed is everything underneath, right? And that's where Joe Burrow, that's his whole game. Like that's the whole thing, the whole reason he was drafted. He's like an intermediate assassin. So I do think it does set up well to kind of, have those guys that operate in the intermediate area, which would typically why tight ends crush them. But I don't think he's almost just not involved, right? Like they're just not going to, like what's going to strike a chord with Zach Taylor and be like, we need to give CJ Uzomah 8 targets today. Like we haven't seen no evidence of that. We have at least seen it a couple times with Tyler Boyd. So I do think that like he would be like the sneaky guy, but you're not going to like run him solo. He's like when you want to get like a double and you're trying to get like a cheap piece back. So you're trying to do like Burrow, Chaser, Higgins, and Boyd, or you're doing Herbert, Keenan Allen, and some, that's when you're adding it. You're not going to do him as just a solo stack.
You're stacking this game, Daigle. You start with Burrow, you're starting Herbert.
It'd probably be Burrow, honestly, to combat any Joe Mixon, because he's obviously going to come in top 2, top 3 among all running backs rostered. Having said that, like it's just Herbert. I wish we could pick and choose better, because his ceiling games, like he has 4 games over 30 points, over 30 fantasy points this year, but it's just been so hard. The Chargers in general have been just a inconsistent team. And so I think it's fine, but you mentioned earlier, like who would you stack with? Like Keenan Allen just seems inevitable with double-digit targets in every game since they're bye. And I also think if you're double stacking Herbert, like Austin Eckler is totally fine in this matchup as well.
Yeah, you can play Herbert with Eckler with Allen, and that's perfectly fine. That's not a problem. I'm okay with running one of my running backs with my quarterbacks when they're willing to catch the ball. No issues with that. Daigle, you got anything else as far as this game, or Reeves, either one of you? Shall we move on?
No, it's fun. It's an early game. It's got a high total.
You could get away with Jared Cook last week, given the lack of values on DraftKings, like at tight end. I don't think it's this week, since everyone's going to gravitate to pretty much the same 2 or 3 tight ends that are underpriced.
Foster Moreau is going to be so heavily owned. We saw him get loose. It's going to be insane. Like not nearly as much on FanDuel, just the way things kind of line up. But his DK price, I think he's like 2.7 or 2.8 or 2.9, somewhere in the 2s. He's 2.7, and it's almost definitely that Waller is going to be out. I think they said he's week to week. So yeah, he's going to be really, really popular on DK. The next 2 games they're featuring are both in the late slate. Man, I don't want to talk about Seattle. San Francisco at Seattle. Seattle is getting 3 points at home. 45.5 is the total. That was the line, at least before Adrian Peterson was signed to the practice squad. I'm not sure if that moved the needle or not. But, I mean, good Lord. It's a match made in heaven. Pete Carroll and Adrian Peterson is 2 yards per carry. Oh, like, what are we doing here? Reeves, jump in. Seattle's just a mess. And Russ, I mean, I don't know if it's correlation, causation, coincidence, whatever you want to say, but he's clearly been bad since coming back from a finger injury, which some people say he rushed back from. I don't know what to do with Seattle's offense. It looks horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about that, I don't know how much we can stretch the finger thing, continue to stretch it out, because he was actually bad before he got hurt as well. So I don't really know how much we can just attribute to the finger. I mean, this offense was already, they started the year awesome. Like the first 2 games, they were great offensively. Actually, the first 6 quarters, I should say. The second half of the Titans game, they started to nosedive, and it just really never kind of bounced back from that point on in terms of like 3 and outs, just starting to not really run any offensive plays, sustain any drives. I feel bad for their defense because like on a per play basis, like their defense is actually pretty solid, but the other opposing teams just run 70 plays against the game, so it doesn't matter. So it just crushes them, and it crushes all their like raw totals given up. But on a per play basis, they're decent. They just get dog walked the entire game because they're on the field so much. I saw some people asking like who could see Adrian Peterson be like, yeah, we need that, and it's it's this team that's been watching Alex Collins run for 5 weeks and DJ Dallas and Travis Homer. Like they're internally like, yeah, that's probably an upgrade than what we've got going on. Cause it's been so bad. I mean, Alex Collins hasn't even gone over 40 yards in his past, 5 games. They tried to give Rashad Penny a shot 2 weeks ago. He hurts his hamstring he has 18-yard carry the first play and hurts his hamstring, of course. Travis Homer can't stay in the field. DJ Dallas has flashed a little bit, I guess, in context, but like they apparently don't want to like give him any extended run. It's just a mess. Now they're not giving DK Metcalf the ball. And any of these guys, like if you just put their offense and like measure it up against anyone else in the league in context, you can say, well, there's DK Metcalf still has a 27% target share. Tyler Lockett's running a route at 90% of the pass routes, which is like 12th among running backs. But yeah, in terms of routes per game, he's like wide receiver 45. Like, this team, they've run fewer than 50 plays the last 2 weeks. Fewer than 50 plays.
Well, that happens when you're 3 and out every drive. Like that's going to happen.
It's insane, man. Like we have to take target shares and route participation, all that stuff that like we like, and just throw it out of the window this offense. Because in context, like there's just no raw value here. Like they're just not running enough actual plays to make us care about any type of upside.
Since Russ's return, the Seahawks have averaged 19 and a half minutes time of possession per game. And of course, they've only scored on 3 of their 30 drives. And that includes those 8 completions for 86 yards and a touchdown with 2 minutes remaining on Monday night.
Oh, man. But you picked this game, Daigle, and I assume you picked this game because you want to talk about the 49ers. I assume you don't want to talk about Seattle.
He's got to have a David Wilson playing this game.
Since Elijah Mitchell is pretty much the hone, like everyone's honing in on 3 running backs on this slate. So I just feel like we need to touch on all of them. Antonio Gibson being the other one between Joe Mixon and Elijah Mitchell. I think the 49ers offense is fun though, because there's just loads of variables of what happens without Deebo Samuel, since he had basically become James Conner and being touchdown dependent on his touches the last 2 weeks. Last 2 games, he's actually logged as many snaps, 21 as a true running back, as he's played from the slot, totaling just 6 targets and 2 catches in that time. So maybe Brandon Ayuk slides in to replace him. Ayuk is more than capable of doing that. Maybe they just give even more touches to Elijah Mitchell, which seems insane after last week's performance, but it could happen. Or maybe Garoppolo just passes more, which increases the ceiling of Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle as well. So I think there are a lot of ways to play this offense, and it's probably an offense you want to play for all the reasons we just noted for the Seahawks defense and offense.
Couple of questions. Hasty, there's a possibility he comes back. Who knows? But will that hurt Mitchell? Do you think Hasty would grab the third down plays? Because we did see, like you said, Mitchell with six targets last week, which where have those been all season long? Do you think Hasty would step in for third down? I know it's a tough question. We don't know if he's playing, but it's a Wednesday night. We're going to guess and do our best here.
He had he disappeared there for a little bit with 0 targets in 2 games ago, I believe. But he had 10 targets and totaling in 2 of his last 3 games. Maybe even 3 of his last 4. I'm looking this up really quick. Yeah. He had 5 targets as well a couple of weeks back. So that's not the only time we've seen him pop up. We don't expect it, like you said, with Hasty in there as the third down back. I would imagine that's how they use Hasty. But again, there are variables with this offense without Deebo Samuel. So maybe it just increases the ceiling of everyone anyhow.
Second question, who is Jawan Jennings? I saw one of the beats on Twitter say he's probably going to be their wide receiver too. He's 3-1 on DK. I presume he's probably like 5K or so like that in FanDuel. Is he playable? Is he just going to exercise? Do we know?
He is a bigger, like tight end version, essentially, of wide receiver. Doesn't really fit the mold of like their smaller, faster yak guys, but he is big. And we've seen now he was actually a off-season like discussion as their number 3 receiver in training camp. And that's why, like in some of the Galaxy Brain 49er best ball stacks and for weeks 15 through 17, all which none hit, by the way, because, Mostert, Samuel now, Trey Lance, Trey Sermon as well. None of them got there, but Jennings was mentioned as their 3rd receiver. And now we've seen him get a couple end zone targets the past 2 weeks as well, a touchdown this past week. And so I think it's going to be more than cardio, especially since we're trying to take these 6 carries per game that Samuel has averaged the past the past 3 weeks out of the offense and instead give those passing, like more passing volume to Garoppolo. So I think he's while thin, like larger field option. I think that's honestly fine if you're playing Garoppolo.
3-1 on DK, 5-3 on FanDuel, not even like a 4-5 or a 4-6. Like he's been playing, a bit here and there. And I look at his snap count, week 10, 47% of the time, 48% in week 11. And again, not a ton of targets, obviously, but in theory, we should mention Deebo Samuel not expected to play. That's the reason why we're talking about him. If you guys missed that, that's why Ayuk is interesting as well. Jump in here, Reeves. Thoughts? If you have a Jawan Jennings, by all means, if you have a take on him, please fire it off and the rest of the San Francisco offense.
Yeah, he was a pretty garbage prospect. 5th-year breakout. The vaunted 5th-year breakout in college.
This is his 5th year?
He was a 5th year. He was a 5-year senior.
Oh, okay. I got you. Go ahead.
Older prospect, bigger guy though. Yeah, big body. I mean, granted that program was trash at that time, so it's not completely his fault. But yeah, I mean, he never really was a guy that flashed like in terms. That's why he went in the 7th round. But anyone in the 49ers, they can scheme anything on a dime here. We just think they pull the rug on us anytime. But Ayuk has been involved. I mean, he's got over a 20% target share in each of his past 5 games already. So he's already involved. We already seen with Deebo Samuel out last season, he had 25% of team targets. Granted, George Kittle was also out all but one of those games as well. But we've already seen him kind of get his way, climbed out of Hades. He's back into kind of the good graces of Lord Shanahan. And is involved in the offense. He's playing well too. It's not like he's just been out there. Like he's actually been playing well the past few weeks. So I do think that he's probably the guy that we'll see kind of get the largest kind of bump outside of Kittle. Remember, Kittle only had 2 targets last week. Like, so anything that goes like in context with Jawan Jennings, like remember, like Kittle's not going to get 2 targets every week. 49ers do this to us quite a bit more than we like with George Kittle, but they'll just ghost him like, every few games. And you're just like, what the hell, man? Like you just forget he's on the team. Like, and yet that happened last week, only the 2 targets. And granted, like Minnesota, like their underlying peripherals too, like they've been really good against tight ends all year. So maybe like there's some stuff that we go back, and I know Pat Pete was on him for a little bit, but you would expect George Kittle just to maul dude like Pat Pete. So I don't know. We'll go back, and he ran a season high pass route for drop back though, and only had 2 targets. That's kind of a bummer. I'd imagine that's not going to be sticky. I think he'll get more targets moving forward, is basically what I'm saying. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to say with Garoppolo because like anytime like we believe in Garoppolo, like he never gets there, right? It's always when we don't believe. He's never a guy I've gotten right. Even in my article all season, even when I'm like, oh yeah, this is a week you can stream him. Nah, it's like another week.
Last week.
Nah, yeah, he never gets there when we want him to get there. Yeah, last week I kind of entertained him a little bit, especially on FanDuel Cash because he was 6'5". And that game got so much steam. I was like, man, if he's only 6'5", like we talked about, Leone played Roethlisberger. We can pay down at quarterback this week, and he just didn't get there, man. Even if he would have got the other Jawan Jennings touchdown, he wasn't going to get there. So it's tough. I mean, Ayuk and Kittle were my primary focus. And then you have Elijah Mitchell, but remember Elijah Mitchell, he's got 5 games at 0 targets. So if he doesn't score a touchdown. He did score a touchdown last week, but he doesn't score a touchdown. You're just getting hollow yardage at his price. He's not the type of archetype of guy I like to play in DFS very much, except for when they're cheap.
And to Dean's point, the 5 target games came in the instances that Hasty either got injured in the game or was out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, do you think that's good chalk or bad chalk? Because like as far as I can tell, again, who knows on Sunday, but it looks like he's going to be uber chalk Mitchell. And it sounds like you're not necessarily, if you fade those touchdowns somehow and he gets 112 yards on the ground and like 1 catch for 7 yards, you're fine. You're good.
I mean, the thing is like, given the time of possession, like given that the 49ers could literally set the NFL record for plays run in this game since the Seahawks was handing the ball over, like, I don't know. It literally could be 35 carries. I'm not kidding. It could be 35 carries for Elijah Mitchell in this game.
Yeah, also, he said 27 and 32 touches the last 2 games. I mean, Greg said Hasty didn't play, but I mean, the touches have been there. It's hard. I mean, like I said, he's kind of a tweener price. The one thing that's going to happen to this slate that like is still TBD is the Darrell Henderson stuff, because like both sites were good on Madison. Like they at least priced him up. And we kind of got a mid price on Jamal Williams, but Sony Michel is not priced up on either site. So if Darrell Henderson doesn't play, and Sony Michel, mind you, took every single touch when Darrell Henderson missed week 3 except for 1 out of the backfield, and it was against the Buccaneers. Like Sony Michel is going to be like the go-to dude because I think he's 5-3 on FanDuel and 4-3 on DraftKings. Yeah. And he's the one guy they didn't price up throughout like all this chaos of backup running backs. And if Darrell Henderson doesn't, because he didn't practice today, it's Wednesday, mind you. But if he's the one, that's the one thing like the news you have to wait on, because he'll be the other log in the fire here that'll just open things up.
Massive home favorite against the Jaguars. Like that's what you want. And like maybe that's what the Rams are thinking. Like, why do we need to push Henderson if we're facing the Jaguars? You know, we don't, you can use anybody, throw anybody back there. Adrian Peterson could lead them to the victory this week, I suppose. Like you said, the price 4-3 on DK, 5-3 on FanDuel, $13 on Yahoo, $3 above the floor on Yahoo. And it is worth noting, we were talking about San Francisco. Ayuk is much more appealing to me. Of course, you can play him on FanDuel, but 5-6 on DK and 7K on FanDuel. Certainly playable there, but just looks, I think he's popping more on DK just because of that.
They refuse to move him. They do not care how many routes he's running the past month. They are not budging.
We got
people have been playing him. People have been playing him over there. I mean, is anyone going to make a sell on any of the Seattle wide receivers? I thought that's where Daigle was going.
Somebody, well, yeah, what was it? Levitan put out a tweet about since the foursome for DK Metcalf, he's lost a lot of targets. I don't know if it was a correlation or what, but shout out to Levitan.
Levitan is all over any sex stories and I never like even understand what's going on unless I'm listening to the solo cast and I hear it. It's like, I would never have guessed that story, but I also imagine like when David Johnson gets touches, he gets pinged whenever players get into sex scandals. So he just easily looks down to his notifications and sees them.
Oh man. Do you want to make a sales pitch?
Lockett would be my choice. It's not even a hard sales pitch. It's just been the fact that Lockett has separated himself since Russ returned and really no one else has. I mean, I guess Gerald Everett also, who leads the team in target share since Russell Wilson returns. Everett also over 70% of the team's dropbacks in that time running routes. So they have clearly gone ahead with Everett as their tight end one since that time. But overall, yeah, for me, it's either Lockett or Everett.
Man, it's just, and are people just going to say no? I think people are just not going to play them as far as the receivers, and they're priced cheaper than they typically have been historically, but more expensive than their output, like especially Metcalf, like of late. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, DK was starting to drop TK down in recent weeks because of the output, but they still haven't gone like really as far as where he's 6'7". He's still like,
he has to go like full Beckham. Like we've seen Beckham like plummet. Right, the same guy, but yeah, and Beckham was the guy like he's still egregiously priced, I think. But yeah, here we go again. But yeah, I mean, you don't think there's gonna be like big steam though, just from like the squeaky wheel narrative, because like all Pete did was answer questions about DK Metcalf. Like and not getting the ball. Like, I mean, it's crazy. Even on the 2-point conversion, he was wide open. I don't know what the story is, man. I don't know what's going on. And also like the going back to the offseason, there was rumors that Russ wanted to get traded, and he said like, well, I don't necessarily want to, but if you are going to trade me, here's a list of teams that please send me to these cities. And I don't know, man. It just seems like a big old mess there in Seattle, and just the whole season is a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be wild. This offseason is gonna be crazy. We saw Stafford get traded this year, and like we really don't see a lot of those moves anymore in today's NFL. And it's like coming back. We're gonna see we just don't know what's gonna happen with Rodgers and Russ, like all. But like if he was trying to get out last year, like what do you think is gonna happen this offseason?
And given the poor quarterback class, like Trubisky, we think is going to be starting somewhere. Jalen Hurts, the Eagles still have to answer that question.
Garoppolo is getting traded.
The Titans rebuilt around Tannehill and Derrick Henry, basically 2 contracts, and like who knows? Like they have so many decisions they could make instead. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting. This offseason is going to be fun.
Trubisky's
Watson's going to go somewhere.
Trubisky's going to start somewhere. It's probably a 1-year bridge, but I would imagine Trubisky does start somewhere.
Rodgers is going to play for Pittsburgh. I'm breaking news right here. He's going to be the Steelers quarterback. How about that? Does that work for everybody? It works for all the
you think they're going to trade a bunch of draft picks though? That's not really.
Isn't Rodgers a free agent? I thought he was a free agent. No. They
have to trade him.
Oh well, I don't know. Ben won't be the quarterback. How about that? Like, there's no way.
Please.
They can't.
Ben won't be the quarterback, and Mason Rudolph will still be the backup.
No.
Ben just going to hold them hostage on principle now.
I'm not even a Steelers fan, but it's just so terrible what he's bringing that entire. All right, let's move on to game 3. I don't want to go on my Roethlisberger rant, but he is so bad. Washington against Vegas, 49.5 is the total. Vegas, 2.5-point favorite. Reeves, I'll let you open this one up. Well, I guess, we got to have the Antonio Gibson conversation here. When we don't know for sure if McKissick is going to be out, or if he's not going to be out. And I don't know if it matters, right? How much does it matter, Reeves? Because, we've seen Gibson since the bye week, earlier in the year, of course, they were babying him a ton, but now they're just feeding him every possible touch he can get.
Well, there's a reason for that. Right? Nothing has changed with Antonio Gibson. I mean, he had some the targets he got in game script. But so think about this. Before the bye, Washington had trailed for the highest amount of snaps in the NFL, more than the Lions, more than the Jets. What is Antonio Gibson's role? He's one of the most game script sensitive running backs in the NFL. Why wasn't he touching the football? Of course, he has the shit injury and all that stuff, but his role in the offense was not to play in those situations. Now, they haven't trailed for 1 second half snap at all since the bye week, and they trailed for just 51 snaps total, none in the second half. So why do you think Antonio Gibson now is able to stack these touches? Oh, the game script is more favorable for Washington. It's funny how that works, right? Yeah, that's what's all come together right now. Now, if J.D. McKissick's out, it now gives him it's a little bit insulation, right, to game script, because they're not just going to put a lot on Jaret Patterson's plate. Especially in the passing. If they weren't even doing it for Gibson, why would they just have a 5'9" guy come into and start blocking guys? So I don't believe that Jaret Patterson would just be a 1A for J.D. McKissick's role. So it would give Gibson insulation for game script if Washington does fall behind. So that's what matters here in terms of J.D. McKissick's availability, because Gibson, nothing's changed. They just have been winning. That's his role has been tied to game script.
Maybe he's gotten healthier. Is that possible? You make a great point. It's an awesome point. Is it possible he's because he was banged up earlier this season? Is it possible he's healed that a little bit?
He has a fractured leg. It's not
he got 37 touches last week.
He even limped off at one point on Monday night. I think it just comes down to also they have nowhere else to go. They know who their most talented player is. And so it just runs centric around him. It's either that or you Taylor Heineke back 40 times a game and let him throw. So I think that's what it becomes.
Interesting game theory, just sort of lineup construction thing, is this Antonio Gibson. And if we don't know the story with McKissick come Sunday morning and we're waiting for actives and inactives, that's a 405 game. And not just that, but the Rams, Sonny Michel situation with Henderson, it's a 405 game. So, we don't dig into that too much, Reeves, but that's definitely something that we might have to face come Sunday.
Yeah, and I mean, the matchup is great too. Obviously, like I said, Washington's been playing clean football. Even if you're projecting, positive game script, it's a great matchup as well on top of things. So, he's a good player, and he was on Monday night, so they couldn't move his price. So he is grandfathered in to his pricing on both sites because he played on Monday nights. They couldn't even recalibrate for him having another really strong game. So all these things line up to where he's an objectively good play and even a better play if McKissick is out, because, like I said, you get some of that insulation of him not being game script sensitive.
6-2 on FanDuel, 5-7 on DK. That just looks like such a good play. Jump in here, your thoughts, Daigle, as far as Gibson. And what if we do get news that McKissick is playing and he's fine? How much does that suppress your you would like Gibson?
I think I still like him because you still like this matchup. It's interesting because Las Vegas under Rich Bisaccia has pressured quarterbacks at the 8th highest rate in the league, but they've still leaked points. They've leaked 29 points per game in that stretch and a league high 32 over the last month. Heineke's been respectable under pressure, 6.7 yards per attempt with only 4 turnovers on 96 dropbacks against pressure. But overall, yes, we know what Washington wants to do with a top 5 run play rate since their bye and neutral game script. Again, they haven't even led, like Reep said, just what they trailed for 1 snap in that span, but just in being within 1 score, they've still been run heavy out of the bye. So it's just really comes down to game theory and the fact that Gibson just didn't get the Monday night bump. That's all. And so 5,700 for a 25, 30 touch guy is, even though he's injured, it's absolutely insane. And so, of course, he can still easily get there if this is a competitive game. That's why the Raiders are also interesting, though, because Foster Moreau, Deshaun Jackson, they're all still super cheap, and we only expect Jackson's role to grow. Even having 100 yards and a touchdown last week, it was only 3 targets, yes, but you know what you're getting when you play Deshaun Jackson. And let's say on DraftKings, even FanDuel, since it's touchdown dependent, you'd still roster him hoping for the ceiling game. He ran the 4th most routes among all their receivers. And that's what he produced on the fourth most routes. So if his role, as it has in all 3 games he's played with the Raiders so far, continues to increase, then like there's still a lot of meat left on the bone here for Jackson. So there's just a lot of ancillary good plays, like ceiling plays in this game if you're trying to pay down elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up as far as the snaps by week. And like to your point, week 10, very first week with the team, 17% of the snaps for Jackson, then 34%, then 48%. And you assume it's only going to increase. I don't know if it's going to get to 100. Obviously, you don't necessarily need that. And like you said, you're just playing them for that one big 80-yard catch, the Ricky Bobby style. If you lose them, you lose them. So be it. But you want them to get loose in the secondary. Your thoughts here, Reeves, as far as the Raiders? Are you in on Jackson? And we already touched on Foster Moreau, but he played 89% of the snaps last week. Pretty much probably going to be on the field basically every single snap this week going forward. Waller got injured early. Yeah, I mean, is Foster Moreau good chalk? Because he's going to be chalky.
I mean, 2-7 is hard to push back. It's hard to have pushback on anyone. 2-7.
Yeah,
I'm not going to fight back on that. And we talked about the Raiders on the Thanksgiving slate last week, and we had talked about just the necessity of why they just needed to have Deshaun Jackson on the field. And you saw they were able to get him up to speed a little bit and get him on the field. He ran a pass route on 56% of dropbacks. Coming into that game since the bye after Henry Ruggs was released from the team, Derek Carr was 22nd in the NFL and averaged up the target after he was 3rd among all quarterbacks prior. He then spiked up. He was 2nd among all quarterbacks in ADOT last week. Just by having Deshaun Jackson available on the field opened up so much more for the offense. It's not always about what it just does for Deshaun Jackson too. It's just what it did for everybody else too. And it made this offense so much better because it's predicated on having that speed threat on the field. Now with Darren Waller out, like we might even see a little bit more extension for Deshaun Jackson. Now Deshaun Jackson is not going to be a full-time player. He's 35 years old. He's going to be a package guy still, but he still has the opportunity to maybe get a little bit more run than even he had last week. And I mean, he was a guy that even if he had 50 pass interference yards too in that game. So, I mean, they were taking deep shots with him. I can't believe Daigle missed up the revenge game narrative, D-Jack's revenge game narrative. But Washington is the worst team against throws downfield in the NFL. Think about any success Seattle had in that Monday night game. Where'd it come from? The only time they moved the football was taking deep shots down the field. And they're 32nd in the NFL in completion rate on throws allowed 15 yards or further downfield. They've tied for the most touchdowns allowed on those targets. So it also does give kind of an inkling if you do want to chase a little bit. He's cheap enough. I don't know what he got bumped up to because he was like man on both sites on Thanksgiving, and then
Jackson on DK is 4.2 on FanDuel. He's 5.2, $15 on Yahoo.
So he went up a little bit. So I mean, you can still chase in stacks. I mean, you have a natural run back with Antonio Gibson if you want. You also have that with the island of Dr. Moreau as well. He only did have the one catch in the second half against the Cowboys, even though being on the field. But I always see him being brought up of what he did in that game against the Eagles. But he also did play the entire second half against the Cowboys, only had one catch, at 5 targets. But at 2.7, I mean, what are you going to do at 2.7? I mean, and even on FanDuel, I think he's 5. Like you just score a touchdown. Like you're just asking for a touchdown as a tight end punt there. And Washington's allowed a touchdown to a tight end 3 of their past 5 games. So at least you have that going for you too. I mean, listen, I have no pushback on.
Dean will get this reference as well. Deshaun Jackson, a lot of Luka in him, and that he complains he wants every flag. Just ask him. Anytime you see a ball thrown his way, he will stop mid-route and start complaining for the flag.
My buddy just saw Luka Doncic in LA out there playing the Clippers. That's the first thing he said to me. He's like, man, Luka complains about every single call. He's like, even when he's not even involved, Luka's complaining.
But to be fair, like if you were driving around Spain in a Lamborghini at 16 years old because you were the basketball god, maybe you complain about everything in life too. So that's fair. You've earned everything.
Daigle, do you have anything as far as, Terry McLaurin? We saw Logan Thomas come back last week, played a bunch of snaps. Are we interested in this? That they're going to be playing football? Anything to get excited about, or they're just sort of on the slate and you can sprinkle them in if you want to?
Terry McLaurin is going to be out there for every single route. He'll probably come in under rostered. He seems to every single week. So you just have to hope for a little pushback from Washington's offense. But also we expect Logan Thomas's, like Deshaun Jackson's role, to increase. And it's interesting because it is a onesie position where everyone's going to play the opposing tight end on the other side of the ball. and Foster Moreau. Logan Thomas only ran 28 routes and 41 dropbacks. But remember, in the first 3 games he was healthy for, he literally was on the field every single snap. They didn't take him off. And so I would expect him to increase to that rate now that he's going to be in his second game back from injured reserve. And so he is an interesting play.
I like it. I like Logan Thomas this game for a game theory stance, a matchup stance, all the above.
We haven't acknowledged the chat the entire time. I just took a peek there. What up, chat? Hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, fire off some. Well, we're going to run through really quickly as far as our favorite plays. Some favorite plays that got to stand out for us, position by position players that are not in the games we just talked about. And if there's anybody you want us to touch on, we'll do our best. We can't talk about everybody, obviously, but do our best to get to those.
I think this segment was where I blacked out at this time last week. Was there arguments about Dontrell Hilliard? Did we mention Dontrell Hilliard on the show? Because that I felt like on Sunday when he scored that 60-yard touchdown, that was the equivalent of when Reeves got upset about Myles Gaskin chalk hitting. Because Hilliard was such a bad play. 13 touches. We knew they were going to run. I think they ran 63 plays. We knew they were going to get average plays. We knew they were going to be a bad offense. Tannehill with 91 yards against the Patriots, and yet people still played Hilliard, and he got there. Was the most frustrating thing that happened on Sunday.
You do 7, 8, 9, 10 shows a week. I think that was on a different show. I'm sure they all start melding together. It's all the same show. But I don't think that was our show.
Well, I don't know if you heard, D, but I also fell asleep on a show. So last week was a little bit of a blur.
There you go. Seamless segue into the sponsor of the show. It's Jock Market. Thanks, Jock Market. Appreciate y'all sponsoring the show. Stop throwing your money away. It's time to check out Jock Market, the app where daily fantasy becomes a stock exchange. You buy and you sell shares and players in real time for real money. Download now for a 100% deposit match up to $50 using the promo code GRINDERS. That's GRINDERS. Get this, if you do not turn a profit this week, Jock Market, they're going to cover your losses in your very first event. Download Jock Market in the app or Play stores or check out jockmarket.com and use the code GRINDERS for a 100% deposit match up to $50 on your first deposit. Reeves, some quarterbacks we've not discussed in the games we've not discussed. I ran my optimals on a Wednesday night, and we're looking at Tom Brady as the chalk quarterback. We saw what happens last week when, the clear leverage is well, what if everybody's playing Brady on a week where there's no quarterbacks that are actually good? Maybe let's just play the running back. Well, that's how I win everything. We'll talk about Fournette in a second, I suppose. Of course, good matchup there in a dome against Atlanta. There's nothing you can say bad about Brady, right? He's fine. It's just that they just didn't, he didn't throw any touchdowns because, variance, I think.
I mean, he has been a little bit down. He's got 7 interceptions in his past 6 games. He's only thrown for over 7 yards per pass attempt in 1 of his past 5 games. So he has been a little bit down based on just the start of his season, but multiple passing touchdowns in 8 of 11 games. The Falcons are awful. They don't rush the quarterback at all. They don't put any pressure on the quarterback. They've got one good defensive back that doesn't move. So you could completely avoid him. It's hard to not, dislike Tom Brady. I mean, we're going to see a lot of Brady stacks, I think, run back, even though they were not fruitful last week. And I still think the Rams stack is still really good to me too. Especially you can onslaught. I mean, you've got them as a 30 point team total. It feels like just such a get right spot. I mean, the Rams have put themselves in such bad holes the past 3 games. I mean, you have 3 pick sixes over the last 3 games. They've just been playing from behind, and it's been unlike any that you get. It's just such a great spot, right, at home against this Jaguars team that just cannot move the football. I mean, this Jaguars offense is terrible.
It's the same situation as a Texans game. And before Stafford got benched, he had to go over 300 yards with 3 scores. It's literally the same situation. They had arguably a better offense now that, you have the explosiveness of Beckham, who is just egregiously priced.
Some other quarterbacks that are popping up this week. Stafford, you kind of mentioned there. Kyler Murray may be back. I don't know anything about the Marvel universe. Don't hate me or anything, but I think he tweeted out a GIF with one of the Marvel guys, and I think it was interpreted like I'm coming back. I don't know. That's not. Does anybody?
Which guy? Take a shot at it. Which guy was it, dude? Which Marvel guy?
It was a real. Oh, was it with the character name you're talking about?
Yeah. Just take a shot. Take a shot at
it. He looked like a really big dude. I don't know. Is he rock like or something? I don't know what his. He's not one of the obvious guys. He's not one of the ones I know. What was his name? Do you know? Do you guys know the tweet I'm talking about?
I don't follow any athletes on Twitter.
Well, somebody else retweeted it for the record.
It's the great Thanos.
Okay. What is he?
Kyler
What's
Murray,
his deal?
Kyler Murray was saying he's inevitable. We don't need to go down superhero knowledge right now. Like Reeves would be 1 on this show. I would be 2 clearly because you don't know who Thanos is, and you would be 3.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm not here to shame anybody. By the way, if you like those movies, have at it. Enjoy it, man. Enjoy yourself. It's just something I've never really delved into. But
I'm not shaming.
yeah. No, yeah. You like what you like. Yeah. So Murray, we think is going to be back based upon a tweet. At least I think he is. And Lamar against Pittsburgh. And we got Hurts, who also said he's going to play, or he thinks he's going to be okay. We'll see how that goes. Stay tuned. Daigle, what do you have for me as far as some other quarterbacks? Any of those, or feel free to add to the conversation.
Yeah, I just had Jalen Hurts also written down, especially like on DraftKings. He's only 200 cheaper than Tom Brady. So it seems like everyone would just find a way to get up to Brady. But I mean, Hurts is in like the same exact situation we wanted to play. Well, some of us wanted to play some Texans players last week. It's still a Jets defense who allowed 7.3 yards per play and 40 points per game. And their 5 contests out of the bye before facing this terrible Texans offense. And now you get Jalen Hurts, who I imagine no one will want to play because of the ankle injury. We should still probably follow news tea leaves to see if he is clearly healthy. But if he is, like, you don't even need to stack him. You can also just do standalone option with him being naked as well.
I just did a quick Google search, and apparently Kyler Murray channels Thanos with cryptic tweet. So there you go. It was Thanos. We read Thanos, cash your tickets. By the way, there's a question here in chat. Nothing to do with quarterbacks or anything, but specifically they're asking Hribar. They want to know your thoughts. Why scoring down this year in the NFL? Just as a general thought. You have a thought on that?
But yeah, I mean, lots of thoughts on it. But really, I mean, the crux of it is, well, you look at last year and playing the pandemic and no home field advantage, and home field advantage was something that's been waning in the NFL anyways, but it was just accelerated at a higher rate last year, especially when you look at like false starts and like red zone efficiency, things that like you would think crowd and noise would have an impact on. Those things were way down outside of NFL norms. And then the NFL literally just said, like, we're going to call the game differently. I tweeted about it today. I mean, there has been as many offensive holding penalties through 12 weeks in the NFL as there was the entire NFL seasons last year. That's not like coaching. That's not coaching or anything else. Like they made a cognizant effort to just not call holding last year. And it's changed. It's flipped. So
why would the NFL want to actively subdue offense? I mean, I know obviously if an egregious holding happens, they're going to call it. But that's a weird take to have, because people tend to like offense is more fun, right?
The same one. Yeah. Like, why do they want to make pointing a taunting? Like they don't know what they're doing.
I mean,
kids are watching.
I did a show at CBS and Mike Conley was on it. And I tried to ask, like, I asked him if the NBA did like anything like this. And he said, no, like, we're just like, they just like started like just changing how they officiated the game. Cause there's nothing like offensive, like there's no coaching technique. There's no like way to say like, this is the amount of like regression that like offensive holding calls had. You just decided not to call it.
If you want to call holding, you can call it in like 9 out of 10 plays, right?
But it's exactly, I had to tweet, there's exactly right now through 12 weeks, the exact number of offensive holding calls. There's the entire season of last year. And we've got 5 weeks left. How many weeks left in the season? 5?
It's like Madden. It's like Twitter updates.
They keep adding weeks, right? They keep adding weeks.
There's 6 if you include week 13. There you go. It's just my UCF math. That was
there's 6 weeks left, and we're already at the same amount we had last year. There's probably going to be more than there was even the year prior, so it's like a all-time regression. But yeah, but scoring is way down this month. The last month, because we just flipped over November, it was the lowest scoring month of the season, and that typically does happen as weather starts to change. Passing does go down a little bit, but just around 4 points per game from September and October. November dropped in terms of the average points combined per game, NFL game. So it was an ugly month. I think people hate fantasy this past month. A lot of people have hated due to the injuries, and that also played into some of the scoring going down too. Just the amount of good players that have gotten hurt this year, and quarterbacks. Think of how many quarterbacks have made a start. I think the official number, I believe, if Glennon starts, it'll be 60 different quarterbacks.
He hasn't started yet, or he's only come off the bench, I guess.
He came off the bench, and then Daniel Jones came back. We thought he was going to miss, and Daniel Jones came off the concussion.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. When I saw that, I immediately bet Miami, and then I thought about it. And I'm like, well, wait a second, like, is that line really going to move a ton? Like, is Glennon distinctly worse than Jones? Like, maybe he is, but I'm not certain he is. I think the line did move a little bit, right? And as far as I think it went like 4 or 5. So I got a couple points.
And I just can't believe like we're here with all the like the talking heads, like the Dolphins are back and stuff. And like we did this with the Steelers. The Steelers played like 5 terrible quarterbacks in a row, and people are like, oh, the Steelers are back. And then the Steelers start playing good quarterbacks and they can't win a game. The Dolphins have just beaten Cam Newton, Joe Flacco, Tyrod Taylor. And they did beat Lamar, but to be fair, the Ravens ran 100 plays 4 days before that game. So I mean, let's pump the brakes. And granted, Mike Glennon, and then they play the Jets next week, and Trevor Siemian. Like it's bad enough to keep the Dolphins afloat. Let's not act like the Dolphins are back to being like some great NFL team either.
Can I invite you to my WhatsApp? I live in South Florida. I grew up in South Florida. A lot of my friends are Dolphin fans, and they're all like, "Oh my God, break out the Dolphins!" And like they're all celebrating how amazing and how Tua is going to be the. And it's the work. It's incessant. And I'm not a fan. I'm indifferent. And just listening to them rave about how amazing the Dolphins are, like you're saying, like let's pump the brakes a little bit as far as the Dolphins. I guess in the right direction.
I mean, it's also Antonio Gibson, like you mentioned. Like game script hasn't changed for him. It's just the fact that they haven't trailed it all. It is Washington's defense, and that like even in playing Brady, the Bucs only had 48 plays because Washington soaked the clock for like 11 minutes in that fourth quarter on one single drive. It's just little things like that. This is why we're here to talk through and sift through little things like that.
We live for the well, actually. That's all we're here for.
Yeah. Any other quarterbacks that are worth talking about, or shall we move on and talk about some running backs? Anything else?
I don't think it's a week where you need to pay down. I think you're looking to get intricate around your paying up.
And it certainly seems like there's going to be value to make that work. Like, again,
God.
It looks like there's going to be plenty of value out there lurking. So you're probably going to want to get yourself a pretty decent quarterback. As far as running backs, I mean, man, we have some really, really good running backs and some good spots. I'll throw it to you, Reeves, like Taylor at Houston, Madison at Detroit. Now the sites did adjust that price, so good for them. Good on them. But still, like, he's definitely in play. Fournette against Atlanta. If you just think more rushing touchdowns are on layaway there. Jamal Williams, it's his backfield now in Minnesota, looks like. Talk to me about the RBs. Who's popping for you?
I have a main event team playing against Jonathan Taylor this week, and oh my God, I'm just on tilt.
Godspeed.
It is against the Texans, like literally the team that's the worst against like explosive runs, facing the number 1 running back in the NFL in that category. John Taylor leads the NFL in carries of 10 or more yards. Texans allow the most carries of 10 or yards per game. When these two teams played earlier in the season, he had 5 carries of 10 or more yards for a total of 129 of his rushing yards. I mean, that's a lot of words on saying play a good player, but
he's underpriced too.
He's 10-5 on DraftKings or on FanDuel. He's 10-5. So at least you got to pay. But we talk about, it's running back's interesting this week because it's got all things. If you want to pay up, those guys are great. Like Mixon's in a great spot. Eckler is in a good spot. They got Madison, right? But like Madison is still a good play. Like he's still a really good play against the Lions. So like he's still in play. Like we don't have to just fade him because of the cost. Elijah Mitchell, you guys talk about and all the touches he's getting. James Conner still goes overlooked, and like he's getting he gets to play with Kyler Murray now, like in that role as like a full.
If you're to trust Thanos.
Yeah, so he gets to play with him. He's been playing 3 games at Colt McCoy and getting all and soaking up touches. Now, what if the Cardinals are back to being like a full-fledged, like bona fide like fire shooting offense? Jamal Williams looks like a really good priced guy. We might get Sony Michel. I mean, it is Antonio Gibson. Like it is across the board at running back this week. I don't know how you narrow your pull down there. There's too many plays at running back.
It's so weird because it seems like it's alternating. Like 1 week we have 10 running backs we love. I think was it last week? I don't like any of these running back space. Was it last week? It's just kind of going back and forth. Can't we just get like 5 good ones every single week and just work with that? But that's kind of the way I'm looking at it here, Daigle. Feel free to elaborate. Jump on for some of your favorites that are thrown out there. Jamal Williams, 5'4" on DK, 6'5" on FanDuel. Not like a flat out punt, obviously. And Madison, we talked about his price getting bumped up there, but that should be his backfield in a positive matchup. 7.6K on DK, 8.7 on FanDuel. FanDuel not messing around, but like again, he should still be in your pool. Like don't run away from that. He's essentially Cook. If you believe running backs don't matter, would you play Cook against the Lions at 8.7K on FanDuel? Like, of course you would. Daigle, what do you have for me?
Yeah, you could easily argue Madison should be 9K. Like previous starts prior to this year, we saw him get games scripted out, but this year in his 2 starts, he has all 15 running back targets for the team. Like, he can't get game scripted out. He is the game script, no matter what happens. So he's an awesome play. Reeves touched on Jonathan Taylor on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, last week he was 9,100 and literally the toughest matchup imaginable. And even in a game that Carson Wentz passed the ball at one point, 26 plays in a row, like, Jonathan Taylor, he reached his floor. Like, we saw what his floor was, nearly 20 touches, 90 yards, and a touchdown. And now he's $100 more in the complete opposite matchup, the best one possible. So, like, you could easily make a case that he should be 10K on DraftKings as well. He should be Christian McCaffrey price on DraftKings, but he's not. James Conner, like Reeves said, season high share backfield touches before the bye. We saw him get game scripted out against Carolina when they got run over, but after that, prior to the bye, he just handled every single touch over, Benjamin. And then, add into the mix as if we need any more. If Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard are rolled out, Boston Scott is also just an awesome play because Kenneth Gainwell doesn't do the things that Sanders and Howard does. Like, he's a pass catching back. Thus, we would expect 20 to 25 touches for Boston Scott in an amazing matchup against the Jets too.
Boston Scott 6-6 on FanDuel. Okay, whatever, but 4-6 on DK. And the Jets, I'm told, it's my understanding the Jets are a team that they tend to give up a lot of fantasy points on
unless
the ground.
David Johnson gets injured. Yes.
Got to get it in there one last time.
I mean, Dean, it's the rest of the season. Like, that's not.
That's the running joke. It's next season and the season after. You're forever tied to David Johnson.
Well, no, just the rest of the 2021. It's just part of it. It's part of canon at this point, the 2021 season.
As far as receivers, we talked about this Rams offense. They're going to get 30 points one way or another, if not in the ground, via the air through guys like Cooper Kupp. Yeah, I mean, what are we going to say about Cooper Kupp here, Daigle? Like, of course, Cooper Kupp is a good play. He cost a lot of money, but he's got to be in your pool, yada, yada, yada. Which Tampa Bay receiver is the play? Is it Godwin? Is it Evans? I don't know. Antonio Brown's not going to play. Makes it a little bit thin. Gronk is an interesting tight end we'll talk about. He wants to get that record. Apparently he wants to get the most 100-yard game record, taking down Tony Gonzalez, I believe. And that will be against Atlanta. Or I think we tie it or we take it down. Not really sure. Just, I don't know why I'm on tight ends, but that passing game for Tampa probably can do whatever they want there against Atlanta. Daigle, some of your favorite receivers, again, Kupp's great. The guys on Tampa are great. Who is it going to be? Is it Godwin or is it Evans? Somebody was asking in chat, and I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Play both again. Like I knew it didn't work out last week. I actually, in smaller field stuff, I had couldn't get away, couldn't pay down. I went the onslaught with the Bucks. Doesn't matter when Fournette gets all 4 touchdowns. It does not matter at all that you have the onslaught with a Gronk. But yeah, I think both are totally fine yet again. Jalen Waddle, also, we've seen now, like, even his floor is just worth paying up for at this point. If you take away that horrible performance and their season opener against the Patriots, Jalen Waddle has averaged 10 targets from Tua in their 5 full games together, their last 5 full games together. And then if you were looking, I think this is more of a FanDuel play. Of course, it is Odell Beckham, Cooper Kupp. You can actually even put in some game theory into Cooper Kupp, since maybe no one pays up for him and everyone just takes Beckham after they ran the same amount of routes, played the same amount of snaps last week. And you can figure that out, as well as Van Jefferson. But more on FanDuel, if you do play the Brady stacks, we know we're going to get volume from Atlanta's side. Maybe they just jam Cordero Patterson into the line for another 16 carries, who it seems like Cordero Patterson never regresses no matter what. But maybe you could also get away with playing Russell Gage on FanDuel. That's the David Johnson play of the week, by the way. If you were looking for a run back, since you're not going to play Kyle Pitts, you're going to get stuffed on Kyle Pitts because they're going to play a cornerback on him. And then Cordero Patterson, it's not really a good matchup for him.
Reeves?
Yeah, the one thing about Waddle to watch is Devontae Parker did practice today. And his targets, his target splits are significantly lifted with Parker off the field. It's not going to run him off the field, but Waddle's a guy that needs a lot of targets the way he's used to get over. So just something to keep an eye on for that one. But yeah, I mean, I think it's more of a Godwin game if we're picking a Bucks guy, but I don't think it's necessarily not an Evans game. So both guys definitely in play. I mean, I lean towards Godwin just because the way the matchup is in terms of like where teams have gotten over on the Falcons, but also Evans had 2 touchdowns against the Falcons earlier in the season too, and he's really good and scores a lot of touchdowns. We're back to the same thing. What's funny is 2 guys that kind of everyone is like not really sure what to do with in the offseason, and we're Adam Thielen and Mike Evans, and they're essentially the exact same players they were last year. But you look at Mike Evans, like he has 3 or fewer catches in 4 of his past 6 games, but still, is right there scoring touchdowns at will. Thielen's doing the same thing. Just the regression isn't caught up to those guys, and they're basically the same players they were. So just keep treating them as is. I will say, if you want to do like a cute run back, I mean, it wasn't just last week. I mean, Russell Gage is 25% of the team targets now in 3 of the past 4 games. He's really their only guy. Kyle Pitts isn't happening. Kyle Pitts has 1 red zone target the past 6 games.
Man.
Like what is going on? Like, what is happening here? I don't know what to say anymore about Kyle Pitts. And I tell people, like, in redraft, like, what are you gonna do? Keep playing him? But like, those teams probably aren't very good. So their season's about to end. So it's really tough where we are with Kyle Pitts, because it's been, and ultimately, like, the season's going to look good. But since Calvin Ridley's been out, I mean, Kyle Pitts has died, man. Like, it's been rough.
Can I get go ahead.
That should have been a perceived good game for the Falcons offense. And Cordero Patterson, again, he's Thanos. He's inevitable. He always gets there. But even Matt Ryan, like 190 yards, that's pretty pathetic outing, honestly.
Can I get a Josh Reynolds at 3.4K on DK take from anybody? He's 5-1 on FanDuel, but it feels like this is something that might be able to help you on DK. I'm not sure if you can lock in that touchdown, obviously, but is that it's playable?
It's like poor man's Deshaun Jackson, because, like, we talk about depth of targets, deep balls, and he has a 22-yard depth of targets since joining the team, but he's also only averaging 4 targets per game. And even though he's second on the team in routes run, just 2 fewer than Amon-Ra St. Brown in that time. So ideally, you would want more volume. You know what you're paying for, though. You're not going to get like shallow targets. You got to hope he comes down with one of those deep bombs, and they're from Jared Goff. So again, Godspeed.
Let's move on. Knock out some tight ends. We talked about Foster Moreau earlier. Like, he's going to be super jockey on DK far as we can tell. Kyle Pitts is playing football, allegedly. I don't know how many stats he'll put up, but he's there. Hawkinson versus Minnesota, Andrews versus Pittsburgh. We haven't talked about the game at all. Gesicki versus the Giants. Dallas Goedert kind of didn't do anything last week, but he's facing the Jets this week. They don't pass the ball, which is kind of a problem. Reeves, what do you have for me as far as tight ends?
Yeah, man, the Dallas Goedert thing stings. It really does. Now, just him and Devontae Smith always said, let's wait for a game where the Eagles have to throw it 30 times. Neither of those guys did anything. It was terrible. I mean, Hurts was really bad in that game last week. I mean, he threw some egregious interceptions, but it is a bummer. I mean, it's a great matchup, though. Like, I mean, it sucks, because it's one of these things where Zach Wilson's so bad, they don't score any points, and like the Eagles throw 19 passes or something. Great matchup again, though, for me to just take the Dallas Goedert cheese. Probably the only other guy like people are waiting on to see what happens is Freiermuth with the concussion protocol. He did practice today on a Wednesday, but obviously that doesn't mean anything with concussions. But it does feel like guys are coming back from concussions more this year, doesn't it? Like, am I just making that up in my head? But if Daigle, you work at Roto World, like you guys do all the. I feel like guys are getting out of concussion protocol sooner than, like, it used to be like, oh, well, that dude's not playing next week. And now I feel like it's the guys are getting back.
That and ankles don't seem to matter. Patterson had a high ankle sprain and he came back and scored 2 touchdowns. Like, it just doesn't matter. COVID list is the one that we ain't seeing you. Like, even if you test positive on a Tuesday, you're not turning around on Sunday. Not a chance.
But I think Freiermuth's like the other like kind of lower price guy people are waiting on, because one, they'll do the BVP, Ravens tight ends, but also Freiermuth's just consistently getting in the end zone. I mean, he's got 5 touchdowns his past 5 games at his price. And this is going to be a passing game for the Steelers. I mean, they all end up being passing games because they suck at running the football. But I mean, the Ravens are a complete pass funnel. Like, they're so good against the run. They make everyone throw. They load the box. They blitz like crazy. And like, all Ben's going to throw 45 5-yard passes in this game. It's going to be a spectacle. So yeah, I think people will look at Freiermuth. I do kind of have some lukewarm interest in Claypool at his price in this game, but I think Freiermuth's got people waiting.
And Ebron went in the IR, right? He's done.
Yeah.
You like Gronk?
So Freiermuth's out. It's only Zach Gentry.
Anybody have a Gronk take? What do you have for me, Reeves, as far as Gronk?
Look at Gronk's full game log. He's been good every time he's played. He's
been awesome.
He's been great. He's expensive though. He's $7K on FanDuel. And he's actually 5.3 on DK. That's a lot better than 7K on FanDuel. But he's been great. He's been great all season. He's played fully healthy. So
yeah, I think it was 4-4 last week on DK. So he took a big jump and still at 5-3. It's like, yeah, I could play this guy. Sure, why not?
When you want to roster like a cheap tight end and him in shootouts like this, or maybe not in shootouts, just in dominant offensive games like this would be for the Bucks most likely. You have to like break your brain and just tell yourself you're not flexing a tight end. You're literally flexing a wide receiver because that's just what he is. Like if he goes 100 yards in the bonus, that's the same thing like you would be flexing a wide receiver with a touchdown. So him, Gesicki, previously Kyle Pitts before he retired, players like that, like, yeah, totally. I think flexing is just fine. You just have to convince yourself you're not flexing a tight end. That way it's easier to swallow that pill. I also think if you're paying down, James O'Shaughnessy, interesting as well. He's your run back naturally with your Rams onslaughts. And we saw in week 1, we've seen this before they traded for Dan Arnold, ran around on 78% of the team's dropbacks, had a 14% target share. Last week, he comes in whenever Dan Arnold gets injured, does the same thing, just goes out there, runs every single route. He's going to be on the field nearly every single snap as their number 1 or 2 receiver.
They both play at 4:00. I just took a peek at the chat, by the way, and the multiple people are talking about Patches O'Houlihan, James O'Shaughnessy, because again, that's going to be his spot there for tight end with Arnold going by the wayside. But I'm just thinking as far as lineup building, is that both 4:00 games? Because if you're behind, moving on to O'Shaughnessy, if you happen to have Morneau, what time is that game? So that's an interesting idea. It's an interesting thought that if your team's behind, you're playing some catch up, you're most likely going up a fair bit.
That's the only site you could play him at.
Yeah, what is he on FanDuel, like 5 or 6K or something?
I mean, it doesn't matter because like that role in the offense literally is they're just going to catch a bunch of 8-yard passes.
It's not 2,600 Moreau. Like Moreau on FanDuel, you mentioned earlier he's a good punt play because like he is a dominant tight end. Like he should be priced higher if Darren Waller's out. Whereas O'Shaughnessy's just going to play the Arnold role, which is 4 or 5 catches, 5 or 6 targets, and you're just taking the points. Which
Arnold was playing the O'Shaughnessy role first.
That's true. Yeah, whichever way it works out.
He's $10 on Yahoo, the floor. Like Yahoo's it's the cap's a little more. It's easier. You make sexier lineups on Yahoo and just kind of look at the prices already. I don't know how much you need that, but playable. But 4 or 5 on FanDuel, but I don't know how much you need that either. Like you said, most useful probably on DK at 2.6K if he is.
Yeah, I mean the thing about he's the pivot. The thing that sucks about that is like it's hard to like when you have those cheap guys as like your late swap guys, it's hard to get up, right? Like it's hard to do other things with your roster. You can really just go from Moreau to O'Shaughnessy, like
which theoretically could be like a gain of 5 points in theory. But like, if you're behind by a point and you're looking like everybody's got, I mean, look, it's just something you can do. And if you're playing for first, Patches O'Houlihan's the guy that's going to take it in first place for sure. But you understand the concept, obviously. Yeah. That is go ahead.
No, that I agree.
That's week 13, boys. Any overarching thoughts before we get out of here? Daigle, by all means, thoughts as far as the slate. You have a favorite game stack? Anything that's worth noting or worth monitoring as we lead up to Sunday?
I do like taking the cheapies and Washington Raiders and trying to build around them. Even if everyone plays Moreau, I just wonder how many people are going to play Moreau and Deshaun Jackson and Antonio Gibson. Like maybe you just take the discounts and then look elsewhere for your stacks. And then I'll also be playing the Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham game theory one. I'm just how many people are going to stuff both? How many people play Beckham and Van Jefferson instead? So yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking to right now.
The Eagles are trash in the chat said, y'all are tripping on Morneau, I promise. Like nobody's here saying Morneau's good, right? We're not saying that, but like we live in the world of a salary cap, and like he's one of those guys that helps you get the guys that are actually good. Like that's just how we don't think he's great. I'm hoping it's not coming off that way. Like, oh yeah, Morneau is gonna like just put 100 and on 8 catches. Like that's not what you need. That's not where he's priced at. Just think it's worth throwing out there.
I don't know. I think Moreau is kind of good. Now he's not going to get 100 yards a touchdown, but he comped to George Kittle out of college. Like he's a touchdown scorer. He's awesome.
Did he win the Mother effing Mackey?
No, hell no.
Oh,
he played for LSU before they threw the football.
Oh well, yeah, that was a lot of fun for sure. All right. Do you have any final thoughts? I don't mean to neglect you, Hribar. By all means, give some final thoughts or just tell the people. I mean, look, at this point, week 13, if they're not following you, if they're not, checking out your work at Sharp Football Analysis. It's probably too late. It's probably not going to happen. They're like, oh, week 15. They're probably either following at this point or they're not. But in case they're not,
I never know who finds this show, but likes DFS takes. But yeah, at Sharp Football Analysis, I write about all these games and players. So if you want to check that out, feel free. Other than that, at Lord Reeves on Twitter. And once again, shout out my wife, 15 years.
Congratulations.
But yeah, hey.
Are you going to a fancy dinner of some sort?
Not just, obviously in season. I mean, listen, I did when I got married, I didn't even know jobs like this existed, so there was no foresight in having a December wedding. So I wouldn't have gotten married during football season. So
your friends were so mad at you. How mad were your friends? You got married in December. Like, come on, was it on a Sunday or not a Sunday?
No. No, we got married on Saturday. So yeah. But yeah, it's I would have done it again later in life if I'd have known that football would be something I'd be doing. So we just deal with it every year.
I had a friend get married on Super Bowl weekend. I still haven't forgiven him for it. It's been like a day.
No, we don't have done anything like that. But it was December was what it was.
You got to step in and make an executive decision and say, like, listen, not super, whatever. I want to compromise and all that, but.
No, we did it. We worked around because where I live, obviously everyone is glued in on like Ohio State, Michigan, so it's always the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So like, obviously we're gonna tie it close to the holiday anyways. But so there was a lot of like, well, if we're gonna do it, this is the one week you can do it.
Daigle, tell the people where they can follow your podcast, where they can follow your one of 17 shows you pop up on as well, your Twitter, all that good stuff.
Good Football Show, iTunes and Spotify. I will be playing golf at Texas Rangers course in honor of Reeves' wedding on Saturday morning. And also you can just subscribe to the NBC Sports Edge YouTube page where I do a DFS recap show live at halftime of Sunday Night Football at Najee Daigle on Twitter as well. If you know the person who no longer watched this show because they tuned in last week to David Johnson takes, tell them to come back for another week.
That was John Daigle. That was Rich Hribar. That was the NFL Pick Six Show, Week 13. Good luck on your matchups. Hit that like button your way out. If you guys are watching us on YouTube, like, subscribe, notifications, all that stuff. I was Dean. We're out of here. Oh.